Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast where we get together, we've watched a movie and we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And this is actually test subject number 100. That's right, this is the 100th movie that we are doing on the main show. So therefore, we always knew what this was going to be. I think I said in like episode 2 what episode 100 should be, and here we are. I stick to my word. It also happens to be Tara's favourite movie, which is why, not to spoil her opinion. it feels like my usual format of saying, "Hey Tara, what did you think of the movie?" But this is 2001: A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick from 1968. We will start spoiler free for a little bit before we go into it. I feel like a lot of this one will be more interpretation and analysis than perhaps describing the plot, because there's not actually that much plot in this. If you actually try to describe the sequence of events, you can do it in a few sentences and then it's done. Because the movie takes its time with some really simple details, which we'll talk about. But
yeah, every time you like pause the film to see where you're at in the time, it's always a surprise that so much time has passed, I think.
Yeah, in fact, one of the key moments I checked, just for curiosity's sake, was the very first line of dialogue. I was curious how far I was in to the movie. It's over 25 minutes before the first line of dialogue. That is how long it takes for a word to be uttered in this movie. So this is an interesting one because obviously it's a big classic. It has a lot of critical acclaim. Stanley Kubrick's one of the most acclaimed directors of all time. All these things. But this is one where I have to say, the first time I watched this, I was maybe 11 years old, and I did not get it. I don't think I enjoyed that viewing at all. I didn't understand anything. I thought it was really weird and boring, and it wasn't until I came back and watched it again, maybe around the age of 18 or 19, that my taste in cinema had evolved a little bit, and dare I say, I was ready to ascend to a new level of film watching. And 2001 suddenly became more special, and I've seen it many times since then. Basically every home video format, I had it on DVD, got it on Blu-ray. All today I watched it on 4K. But it always seems to kind of be one of those movies that I put in as one of the first things on the new format to, like, okay, I know how this is supposed to look. It's always stunning. It's shot in, I think it's like 60mm, 65mm film. Looks glorious. We'll get into what the movie actually is, but it is Tara's favourite movie, and I've been hogging the mic. Do you know what it is? I don't have, because I can't ask the question this time, because we already know it's your favourite movie. I don't know how to lead into this, so I'll just say, here's the floor. Feel free to gush.
Yeah, my background with the film is it's like one of my earliest memories. My family moved around, not a whole lot, but it's significant ages we've moved. And one of my earliest memories is going to it's like a garage sale, and someone had a bunch of books. And I remember using my own 10 cents to buy the 2001 book, because I already had some association with the film, probably through my father. I still have the book. It's beat up. It's missing the jacket. But it's probably the oldest thing I actually own. Like, the thing that I've owned the longest. So, like, even when I was young, I knew the movie was special. I think the moment I watched the film where it really spoke to me and stuck with me, I think I also was 11. And I remember watching it and just being so blown away with the imagery of the film. And I used to like draw all the time. I was a big drawer. My hobbies were staying in my room, so whatever hobbies were a result of just being in isolation, that was it. So I went on a trip with my friend and her family, and like the whole trip, I just drew pictures from this film. So I have a lot of, I have a lot of nostalgia for the film. Like, even early on, like when I watched it and the parts that I didn't understand, I just couldn't wait to get older so that I could understand them. And now that I'm here, like there's still parts of the film that I think you're not really able to explain. It's not it's not a movie that holds your hand. It's a movie where it's like, well, what do you get from it? It's more like a musical piece. Yeah.
All I took from that was you rubbing it in my face that you were a more sophisticated 11-year-old than me. That's all I got from that.
Well, you would take it very personally.
What's that supposed to mean? What are you getting at?
Sound bad to you.
How dare you think you've got me figured out? It's not true at all. This is... yeah, the movie is beautiful. Stanley Kubrick films always have a very stark, distinct visual look. He knows what he's doing with the camera. And sometimes it feels so simple and so symmetrical. It almost... I feel like you watch a Stanley Kubrick movie and you think, oh, how hard could it be to do this? Because sometimes all it is, you know, there's a shot early on in this movie where it's like a boardroom style scene and someone's up at the podium and the camera's just at the back of the sort of the U shape of the tables, right? It's just traditional kind of boardroom / classroom kind of setup. Not so much a school classroom. I'm thinking more like a university classroom. Typically you'd get like a U shape kind of layout, and the camera's just at the back of the U shape, very in the middle, symmetrical, looking up. You think, okay, they've just put it he's just put it in the middle, right? Surely that's the instinct that anyone would have, is just put it in the middle. It's easy. There's almost no thought went into it. But somehow, partly because a lot of other things go into this, like lighting, like direction of the actors, like set design, so many things, right? Because that's the other thing. Everything in this is meticulously designed. Even the chairs in this scene have got this weird kind of futuristic kind of look to them, but retro futuristic because obviously it was made in 1960.
Yeah, they look like a modernistic in the 60s.
But you watch some of these shots, some of these scenes, and you think, anyone could go, any film student could go and recreate something that feels comparable to this, and it's a crushing lesson in how untrue that is and how difficult it is to actually make the simplest. And one of the words I use a lot when I'm talking about good filmmaking is confident. There's a confidence to good filmmaking, particularly in how a scene is blocked and how it's staged and how the cinematography captures the scene. Because one of the ways that you learn how to shoot things, if you're shooting like a dramatic scene from a movie, TV, whatever, is that you kind of learn that you have different types of shot. You have your master shot, which is just capturing the whole thing in one big wide shot. But then you'll go in and you'll do like your close-ups to your different actors. You'll do your medium close-ups. You'll have maybe a 2-shot, as maybe a sort of closer in of 2 actors, or a 3-shot with 3 actors. And you do all of these for the scene. Let's say there's a few people in it, so that when you get into the editing room, you have a lot of choice, because you'll find that certain things don't work. That you'll try and cut from that shot to that shot, and you'll go, it doesn't really work. You kind of have to go back to the wide. It doesn't really flow very well, and you counter all these problems that don't quite work. When I watch a Stanley Kubrick movie, this may not be true, but in the case of that U-shape, that boardroom scene, it's all basically in one shot, or maybe 2 or 3 shots. I think it goes up to the guy in the podium, like maybe for extended time in the middle, but there's not a lot of leeway. There's not a lot of, I imagine, much like, I think Hitchcock was kind of like this with some movies as well, where he'd basically already edited it in his head, and he would just go in and do it. And again, you think, can't anyone do that? Because I mean, when I was thinking of what I was going to shoot in movies, I would sort of try and edit it in my head before I do it. But then once you start actually shooting, and then once you start trying to edit, you realize, oh no, there's so many little things you don't account for that then go wrong, and then you have to try and fix it. And that's why you're taught to get so much coverage of everything, so that you've got all the different puzzle pieces that you can make the finished scene out of.
Right. And I did listen to the audio commentary, which was with the 2 actors that we see later on in the film, on the Discovery, and they did explain that the majority of shooting the film was just Kubrick setting up lighting, and like like most of the time it was they had to wait like hours for the lighting to be just perfect, and then they would go in and do their scene. And then as far as directing the actors go, there really wasn't any direction. I think he just sort of trusted that he had hired the right people to know how to play the role. And he was just, I mean, he has a background in photography. So for him, it was just about getting the shot right, not about what the
I think
actors were doing.
I mean, that's a little strange for a director, because obviously directing the actors is equally a big part of the job. But
also, this film has like hardly any dialogue. The movie is like over half of the movie has no dialogue in it.
Well, yeah, but even more so. That to me, that says you have to direct actors even more, because they have to do so much with their body language. They have to do so much with their actions. But the point I was trying to make, though, is that I think one of the unsung kind of elements that, and maybe, you know, if you've listened to this podcast and maybe you're just like a casual movie watcher who's likes hearing people talk about it, and you don't really know some of the, you know, the lingo, you don't know maybe some of the ins and outs. Like, when we talk about cinematography, obviously your immediate thought goes to framing, it goes to camera movement and where the camera's pointing. But I don't think most people who, again, aren't necessarily as into filmmaking or as photography, is that cinematography is as much about the lighting as it is about anything else. The cinematographer is also in charge of what the lights are doing. And that's why setting up the lights is so important. In fact, it's one of the big things that separates what a professional looking movie looks like versus some little student film, is that trying to light a scene to look good on camera is really tough. And it might seem obvious. You may think, oh, someone's just sitting at a table and there's a lamp, and oh yeah, this is easy peasy. But if you go and try and do it yourself, you'll look back at the footage later and go, this looks like shit. Why does this not look like, you know, X movie, Y movie? And again, like, so that meticulous level of like Kubrick setting up lighting for hours on end for each individual scene, that gives me like dark flashbacks to like you know, shooting movies and like being obsessed with the lighting, but having no time to really do it. So you had to just sort of quickly go, well, I guess that'll do, because we have no time to do anything else.
There's a lot of behind the scenes things that, you know, you're right in that Kubrick just comes off as confident, like he has the movie in his head already. But there's a lot of things you find out where, you know, a lot of the lines are improvised. Between the two leads, especially, and like the scene in the pod where they're talking to each other, is like there was dialogue that was written for that scene, obviously, but Kubrick didn't like it, so he said, "Why don't you guys just try to like make your own lines for it?"
That's it's like a weird comparison, but that's very wrestling. Because typically in wrestling, because obviously they're telling stories, what they'll do is they'll have bullet points of like, okay, here's the story beats we have to sort of get across in this promo.
Yeah, or like Curb Your Enthusiasm is the same way.
Yeah, but we're not actually going to script all the lines. You just say what's natural, say what feels right, but just make sure you get these 2 or 3 points across.
Yeah, I think the problem with that scene that he had was that the dialogue he had written was just too much. There was too much of it. And he wanted things to be a little bit more concise and more realistic. So he just had the actors like improvise to each other. And he would have somebody like write up the lines that they were saying. And each time he would have them read those and improvise off of the previous one until they got something that they liked.
Yeah. No, it's, I think, you know, I talk about being confident. I mean, I fully acknowledge that every director who comes across as confident, there are those things that they didn't plan for. There are improvisations. It's kind of like, it's kind of like, I guess I'll compare it to like a musical performance, right? Is that you go to see a band or an artist who, right, and they're professional, and you'll go and see a set and it'll be almost perfect, and it'll be, you know, a stunning display of all this music and all that. What you don't see is the hundreds of rehearsals where the first 50 sounded terrible, where all these things didn't quite work. But you go and see it and you can't imagine them being bad at it. You can't imagine. And a movie's kind of like the same way. You don't let anyone see it till it's ready to be seen. And
yeah, I don't know. You think of like great directors and you think that this is their baby, and it's hard to let other people influence your baby. But it's, you know, he really did get a lot of input from his actors for this film in particular. Like even there's a scene, I'm not going to exactly describe it, but there's a scene at the end where he legitimately didn't know how he was going to do it, and just talked to one of the actors and got ideas off of, I think a few of them. Like there was just a group meeting, like, I got to shoot this and I'm trying to portray this, but I don't really know how. And how are we going to do this? And it was like a team effort to come up with how they would portray like the passage of time.
And this is all very varies from person to person. Obviously other directors, like, they do have everything sort of mapped out in their head, and that's not wrong either. I mean, obviously filmmaking is a collaborative effort, but ultimately if a director has kind of like, okay, this is what I want you to do as an actor, and this is how I'm going to shoot it, and I've got all this stuff, and by all means, like, I think a lot of directors will sort of give the actor a take for them, right? They'll say, okay, do it my way, I'll give you a take to do it your way. And sometimes, and when they get to the editing process, they'll look at the actor's version and go, you know what? In some cases, I'll actually pick their version because maybe the actor actually had the better, the right idea for the moment in a way that I couldn't have because I was too busy.
Yeah, but now that you're stepped away from it, you can see, okay, they had a point.
Yes, that said, though, sometimes you take it too far. I don't know if you've ever seen the making of stuff for Blade Runner where Ridley Scott got like 25 takes of like a plate of soup being put onto the counter. It's just a close-up of soup. It was like these are all the exact same, Ridley. Why are you taking 50 takes? What are you doing? You're wasting time. So, no, that was an interesting topic to jump into immediately. Kubrick's craft, but
I mean, like I do think this film's a masterpiece.
Well,
so
I
why
think,
not?
To go back to me using the phrase confident, I think the other way I'd describe it is when I'm watching most movies and TV, and it's not to say that when I'm talking about professional movies and TV that I think they're substandard, that I could do better, but there is a sort of typical standard of the way you shoot something where I can just almost see the marionette wires, right? I know how they're doing it, and I can see all the ways that they're covering themselves. I can see how they've maybe fixed mistakes if there was a mistake. I can see all the little safety nets, I suppose. But when I'm watching a Kubrick movie, it's the same way when I'm watching other directors, like I can't think of another example. But when I'm watching a Kubrick movie, I find like I don't see the safety nets. It feels like a madman in a weird way had this way of doing it, and clearly that's not the case. But he's so good at what he does that ultimately ends up feeling like that. It feels like there is no safety nets. I was going to use David Lynch as a comparison, but David Lynch does have safety nets because he's so weird and wacky that he can literally do anything and it'll come across as intentional.
I see.
Because, I mean, in the newer Twin Peaks season, actors who had passed away that he couldn't bring back, he literally just turned... David Bowie's character from Fire Walk With Me is just a teapot in the new season, and it's like, yeah, it's David Lynch, you can get away with turning the character into a teapot, it's fine.
I still have no idea what this Twin Peaks is about.
I've watched the whole thing, and even I only have a vague idea, so, I mean, that sounds about right. That's part of the fun. But I do think David Lynch is an interesting comparison, because I think the ambiguity and the interpretation that you're supposed to like make for yourself with this, even though I think there's kind of a set core interpretation that everyone more or less agrees on, the core, the broad strokes of. And it's the same with David Lynch. So the broad strokes, most people tend to go, yeah, okay, those broad strokes are there, but there's lots of little things that you can take for yourself. There's lots of your own little twists on it you can do. But there is a comparison there. This isn't as inherently weird, although, to be honest, rewatching this, the last 10 minutes are actually very David Lynch in a lot of ways. There's a lot of David Lynch in those last... And I mean, I've never heard David Lynch say he's a fan of this film, but it would not surprise me if he is a big fan of 2001.
I imagine most directors are.
I bet there's one that isn't. I bet there's like a really good director who just happens to hate Stanley Kubrick movies.
It's like, I don't get it. I don't know what I watched.
I don't like Kubrick. But it'll be someone surprised. Because you expect Michael Bay to say that. But I bet there's like a really good director who, for some reason, just hates Stanley Kubrick movies. And it's like, wait, what? I don't understand. It's kind of like how...
like Peter Weir or something. He's like, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Kind of like how Christopher Nolan revealed that he really likes the Fast and the Furious franchise. And it's like, wait, what?
Isn't this also his favorite movie?
It wouldn't surprise me. It seems like it's up his alley. I mean, hell, Interstellar's basically a remake of it. So we should probably do that later this year, just since it's 2001.
Yeah, our plate's a little bit full right now before the Godzilla movie, but I think another thing that separates this film is the choice of the music, because right away, like, I know that there was a score that was made for the film, at least the first half, and then Kubrick said, why don't we just use the Blue Danube? And sure enough, it works perfect.
I'm happy you
but
know the
I
name
think
of it because I don't. To me, it's just the 2001 music.
Well, yeah, that's the waltz is the Blue Danube.
The waltz is that. Okay, what about the main theme?
That's also Sprach Zarathustra.
That sounds right.
Yeah, Strauss.
I never remember it, but when someone says it, I'm like, oh yeah, that vaguely sounds like the last time I heard someone say it.
Yeah.
I mean, because the waltz is actually that's used enough in other places, or I heard it in school enough that still sounds like it's a different piece of music. Like when I hear that waltz in this movie, it sounds like, okay, this is a famous piece of classical music that he's put in the movie.
See, I can't separate the two anymore. Like for me, when I hear that song, I don't hear like the waltz. I hear the dance between the spaceship and the space station.
Yeah, but the main theme, on the other hand, that to me is just 2001's music, even though it wasn't written for this, even though it's not.
Right, or even the Requiem song is the song of the monolith now.
Oh, the chatting one. Yeah.
Yes.
I can't do it. Clearly I can't do it. But
It's more of a
yeah, there you go. Which we'll be hearing again, actually, because it's actually used in a Godzilla movie that we'll be talking about soon.
Right. And I think it's a smart choice because of its association with the monolith in this.
Oh,
film.
sure, yes. It's
Something otherworldly.
It's very distinct and unique, and the music is a big part of the character.
Plus, it makes it feel more important. Like you're watching something. Like although there are things in the movie that very much date it, it does come off a bit more timeless because you're using music that's timeless. Does that make sense? Like it sort of makes it feel important, like right from the beginning.
I don't think that you couldn't achieve that with a score for it. Like I think certain composers could do that with the original score. But I get what you're saying. That effect is definitely there.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's almost like you're watching something that is, I don't want to say documentary, but something that's not quite a movie. I think between a documentary and a movie.
I think what you're kind of saying is that the music that's used in it. I mean, I don't know how old some of them are, but the waltz is definitely very old. So the fact that the music's already old, it means that it's not like it doesn't sound contemporary to 1968. So therefore, it doesn't sound like now it's, even though it's actually older than that. So in a way, but because it's become just like a piece of music that's always used, it's kind of like sure, I associate Ode to Joy with Die Hard, but Ode to Joy is so old that it's kind of timeless now. Like Ode to Joy just sounds like a piece of music. It's like, I don't know. Happy Birthday, I guess, is kind of the same thing where Happy Birthday does not feel associated with the time. It's just Happy Birthday. It's just forever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, and obviously there's a risk. And I'll say it before, because I know there's going to be at least a couple of comments. Yes, I know a lot of people associate the main theme with Ric Flair because he went on to use it as his entrance theme. He's a wrestler, by the way, Tara.
A lot of people were going to say this, huh?
Yeah. Some people are going to say this because he used it. He used it for literally decades. So to some people, they knew it from him long before they ever heard or seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I know to a lot of people,
I would have used the Requiem song as my entry music, but Godzilla beat me to it.
So, no, music's very good. The effects are very interesting, I think, in this movie, because there's a lot of beautiful paintings. And don't get me wrong, you can tell that in a lot of cases it is just like a sort of two-dimensional like object moving through space in some cases. So obviously there's some models too, but and there is actually something, and this is something that I noticed in the Blu-ray as well as 4K. I don't know if it was noticeable before then, if this is just like as quality's gotten better, this has become more visible. But there's definitely points in the film where there's something in space, and you can almost kind of make out like a little square around them. Wait, what?
It's like a rectangle, yeah.
Yeah. You can make out like a sort of, it's just like a faint, like, as if it's just a slightly brighter square on the image. And it's not, I think it's just where you can sort of see they've kind of imposed in whatever they're putting onto the rest of the image. It's not really, I mean, it's not a complaint. It's a very minor thing, but it's really one of those things you notice now because you're good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is something that you notice as the quality of the film improves, like as you get the 4K restorations, like
yes.
Some of the flaws are also more noticeable.
That said,
as well
though,
as the details.
That said, though, it's very minor, and I would never give up how stunning this film looks otherwise to fix that, because this movie,
even the model work is just gorgeous.
Yeah,
in the film.
the sets are all very like highly produced. I mean, you've got essentially like a terminal waiting room on a space station, and it's this glorious like bright white light with this grid and these red chairs, and everything just pops, and it's a lot of stuff. Because I think I noticed in the background it's the Hilton. It's like the Hilton Space Station 5. Yeah. So just those little touches. And
there's Hilton, there's Pan Am, which is not around anymore, but
yeah. I mean, at the time it felt like a safe reference, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think some of the tech stuff holds up. Some of it feels a little oddly dated. Or like, okay, they had a nice idea with that. For example, at one point in the film, Dave is playing chess with Hal, but it's on a screen. And it actually looks just like, if you go to chess.com to play against other people online, online chess, it looks just like what they're playing on that screen. Like, it's actually kind of weird how I mean, sure, okay, how do you visualize chess on a 2D screen? I mean, you're going to get something similar, but it's just kind of, it came up and I was like, you know what? This was in 1968 when computers were barely a thing, right? You know, like a computer at this point was a fridge that costs thousands and thousands of dollars and could do like some simple math. Like that's, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's where we were. So fair play. Also, when I was googling something before we came online, I discovered that the myth of why it's called HAL, the one letter down from IBM, is complete nonsense. In fact, to the point where apparently Kubrick and Clark being the co-writer and the one who authored the book, said that if they'd noticed that it was one letter down from HAL and that people would think that was something, they would have changed the name, but they didn't notice. So it's like, okay, it just is now, but
yeah, it stands for something else. I don't remember the acronym, but
yeah. Well, it stands for something in the context of the story, but they didn't name it because they can make an acronym out of anything if they really want it to be a certain batch of letters. Look at SHIELD from Marvel. Like they really went out of their way to make sure that spelt SHIELD.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. They just thought of words that would make some kind of amount of sense to make it happen. But yes.
Yeah, and how was it even the original name? They were originally going to do like I think Athena or something, which kind of reminds me of when we watched Demon Seed and their AI system was named Proteus. They always want to go for the Greek god names, much like, you know, what we name the planets and the stars and stuff like that.
That makes some amount of sense. That makes some amount of sense. And we haven't really talked about what the movie is yet, weirdly. I guess because we're saving it mostly for spoilers. I suppose the key thing is that, yes, we're in space for the majority of the film, and it's about trying to get to Jupiter, basically. I'll leave it there. I will get into everything else in spoilers. But it is notable that the opening 25 minutes has no dialogue. The final 30 minutes also has no dialogue, which is unique in and of itself. There's definitely some ballsy moments. There are sequences where Kubrick just basks in the grace of the space travel and the grace of, I'm sure, sets that they were very proud of that spin at the right pace so it looks like the actors are running around a circular thing and all the rest of it. At least I'm assuming that's how they did it.
Yeah, that set design is really awesome. And like when you hear about how they how it like came together, like it basically splits apart like an Oreo in order to like get like a camera in there, and then the camera can track, because when you look at the set, it looks like a big hamster wheel, but there is a line down the middle of it that's slightly wider than the other lines, and that's where the camera can go down a track and follow them. It's a really cool set.
Honestly, because that one makes sense to me because it's circular. I can kind of get how the set spins as he's running, right? The one that really gets me is before that, in the shuttle going from the space station to the moon, there's like an air hostess who, in her, what do they call it, grip shoes, I think they were called. But she walks like up the wall and then onto the ceiling, and okay, maybe you're spinning the set, but for this to look right, the camera has to move at the exact right pace for this to work. So is that how they did it?
I don't know. There's another shot where both Dave and Frank also go down a hallway and then onto a platform where they walk upside down. And I think the camera has to like stay still and then start rotating at the same time that they step on the platform. I don't, it kind of like hurts my brain to think how they did it.
Because the reason why this was
It's
boggling
super
my mind.
impressive though.
It was boggling my mind because there's no tell. I was expecting like a little bit of judder or something when it started spinning, because the camera can't perfectly match the spin of the set, so that
Yeah.
it looks like the camera's, because it'd have to spin in the opposite direction so that it looks like the camera's staying still, because that's the effect you want. You want it to look like, because that's what it looks like. It looks like the camera's staying still as she's walking up and around onto the ceiling, but it's so perfect that I have to think there's something more to it than just the set was spinning, because the camera would have to spin in the opposite direction at just the right speed, starting at just the exact right time, that I can't buy they pulled that off.
I think they do, because in the commentary they bring it up. The actor who plays Dave Bowman is talking about how they did the shot when he and Frank have the scene together, where it's essentially the same thing. And
yeah, but that's
even the way he explains it was just like, and as soon as we step on this platform, now the camera is moving on a separate platform in order to match. I'm like, what? Like, how do they time that so perfectly?
Well, no, but that's two things. One, their examples in a circular room, which is different. That's easier. And two,
no, it's the same thing though. I'm talking about the scene where they walk straight down a hallway, and then the end of the hallway there's like a spinning room. And the shot never leaves the hallway, so it's the same. It's the same thing.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. I'm thinking of the running, the jogging, and stuff, and that central.
No, that was
area.
just a camera on a track. Yeah, in the middle of the Oreo set.
In the middle of the Oreo set. So it's so smooth though. It feels like it's the sort of thing where today you could do it, because you could use, like, after the fact you could clean it up a little bit. If it wasn't perfect, you could clean it up a little bit in the computers. But this is 1968. They can't do that. So it was kind of blowing my mind as I was just thinking about it as I was watching it tonight. I was like, oh, this how did they do this so perfectly? Because the only way I can think of them doing it with the set spinning is the camera has to spin in the opposite direction, but it has to do it at just the right pace that it just feels like it's not moving, because it genuinely feels like it's not moving.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, it really is like mind blowing when you really like. It seems like it would be a simple effect because it's something we can do easily today in film, but like when you really sit down and think about like how do you do this practically, it seems like it would be too difficult to not have some sort of tell, like you were saying.
Well, and the part that makes it difficult is the fact that you want the camera to appear to be still. If you just had the camera follow the person who's walking, it would be easy, because you would just have the camera would just stay still in real life, and the set would spin with the actor, and it would look like the camera's tracking with the actor as the set is spinning. But because Kubrick made the choice, no, I want this to look like it's still, it made it harder. It made it more difficult, and that's the impressive part. So, that's just crazy nonsense. Again, Kubrick being a madman, and whoever's building these sets and all these contraptions. So that stuff's really cool. I mean, we should probably get into the meat of this. We start talking about what the movie is and talk about different sections and stuff. So
sure, I suppose so. You know, one last thing that the movie actually reminds me. The only other movie that I think I can compare it to is Fantasia. Have you ever seen Fantasia?
I've seen Phantasm.
No, not the same.
That was actually a very, very, very like deep cut reference to the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's an episode where Xander for Halloween.
I just so regret bringing this up.
Where Xander, he pulls out some videotapes for them to watch on Halloween, and he pulls out Fantasia, and then gets really upset because it was supposed to be Phantasm. To continue.
Okay. Well, you've not seen the movie. It is a classic Disney animated film, but it is also a movie that is using the form of the visual medium in order, complemented by like famous symphonies in order to tell a visual story. There's no dialogue in any of the sequences. And there is also a sequence at the end of it where they had to really like come up with some insane practical effects. Even though it's an animated movie, they use special effects with camera works and glass paneling and stuff in order to come up with the scenes that they wanted to have in the film. And I think, and it's the only movie that I can kind of compare these two in that sense. Like it's plus the use of the classical music for visual storytelling. I think there's a lot of parallels to the films. Anyway, that's all. You've not seen it, so it doesn't matter.
It sounds like a fine point to break. I can't confirm or deny any of this, but it sounds sounds interesting.
Sure.
All right, so I will thank our Patreon producers for the month before we get into the spoilies. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. Thank you all very kindly for being our Patreon producers, which you can be at $20 or more. But you can support us for much less than that, can't you, Tara?
That's right. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MilefuzzTV. And if you donate as little as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of The Ace. If you're looking for your favorite B-movie schlock, as Peter would say, perhaps it's there. We got lots of Mystery Science Theater adjacent films, including one starring Red Brown and Garrett Graham and David Carradine and all the favorites. So please head over and check that out. Thank you.
Is that something you specifically associate with me saying, schlock?
Yeah, I never used that word before I met you.
I didn't come up with that. I mean, I definitely have taken that from other people who use it. So,
Well,
I'm not taking credit for it, but
that's okay. Much like film, it's okay to be inspired by others.
yes. I'm glad to inspire you, Tara.
Thank you.
So, I don't think you understood what I just said there. So yes, so spoilers from this point on for 2001. It's a weird way to talk about. There's almost not much you can really spoil because it's such an audio visual experience rather than a story experience. But we have to start talking about the dawn of man because the movie very boldly starts with the caption saying the dawn of man.
Well, actually, it starts with a blank screen and just music playing.
Yeah, I mean, other old movies that do that are long.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
Other movies have overtures.
Movies start with like Metro Goldwyn Mayer or whatever, and then they'll have orchestra music
Tara,
and
other
opening
movies
credits.
have overtures. This is not unique to 2001.
Yeah, but they always have something on the screen. This is a blank screen.
Sure, fine. Maybe that's true. I can't remember if other ones have blank screens or not. But overtures were a thing, especially for long movies in the 50s and 60s. This is not that unique.
I mean, they would have an overture with credits, opening credits rolling.
No, separate from opening credits, different. Other movies have overtures. Oh my god, do I have to Google movies with overtures?
And a blank screen? I think it's supposed to be, because it's the same music that plays like over the monolith, so I think it's supposed to be implying something.
Oh my god, list of films with overtures. There's a Wikipedia page for it and everything. There's literally tons. Now, most of them are in the 50s and 60s. There's some in the 70s. Ben-Hur had an overture. Spartacus had an overture. You like Spartacus? You love Spartacus. That had an overture.
I haven't seen Spartacus in a long time.
It's not a Kubrick movie. Hell, it's
I assume it's good.
Mad World had an overture. The original Dr. Dolittle had an overture. Tons of movies had overtures. This is not unique to 2001, damn it.
I still think this movie does it in a unique way that is meant to mean something.
Is this like when there's a couple of movies in the past where I have jokingly said we have to start with the Fox logo or something. And I feel like this must be what you felt like when I said that. I did not expect you to go, no, we have to talk about the overture. There's stuff to talk about in the overture, but there's nothing on the screen. I took this as just a bygone era thing and nothing to do with the movie itself, really. But
I understand. I mean, the movie also has an intermission, which is something that we don't get anymore.
yes, also the bygone era. There's also music at the end, so there's like an outro overture as well. So the movie looks like it's 2.5 hours. It's actually more like 2:20 once you take off the start and the end and the 3-minute intermission. But all right, can we get to Dawn of Man now? Are we on? Are we on Dawn of Man?
Don't get sassy with me.
I'm not being sassy. I'm here to talk about apes. I think what's funny is it occurred to me as I was watching this opening section that this came out the same year as Planet of the Apes. That's kind of funny that probably the most famous ape scene in the history of cinema came out the same year as Planet of the Apes, but it's not Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to start talking about the monolith and what it means, because essentially we see this ape society. We see them be attacked by a leopard. I think it was a leopard anyway.
Yeah, that's a crazy scene.
Yeah, especially since it's clearly, it's obviously it's a guy in an ape suit, and
it's a real cat.
Yeah, that cat looked real. So, some serious stunt work going on there. But of course, the monolith appears. We get the creepy music that comes with it, and it's this like they're all confused. They're gathering around it that they don't understand. And then, of course, it progresses, and one of the apes starts to use a tool, and this is where the dun 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 dun, right, and it's essentially the dawn of man, and this ape is learning to use a tool for the first time. That is the scene that we're watching. We're watching the beginning of tools, and one of the little details that I really like about after this is that you see that not only do the other apes start using tools, and they start to like eat better because of it, because they've killed a deer or whatever it is, but
it's a tapir.
There you go.
The little pig-like looking thing, it's a tapir.
But what I like about this is that you also notice in these following scenes that even the younger apes, like the children apes, they're starting to like play with the bones as if they're tools as well. So you can already get like an example of this is passing down to the next generation. So there's a lot being said here. Bizarrely.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that it's not just a tool, it's a weapon that they learn how to use. And it's because when we see like two different tribes, and one of them is got like control of this dirty water hole. But now that one of the ape tribes has touched the monolith, and they have had this enlightening experience that's going to change the course of history. And they now all of a sudden they have a weapon to use against their own species to gain an advantage and become greedy and are able to have war. Like, it's also showing like the earliest wars that we've had between our own species now. So we have this technology that has driven us to war already, which I think is a theme that is in the book, to be honest, like a lot. And also the very next scene that we go to, like the ape throws the bone into the sky, and it's a classic like shot of where the bone becomes a lot of people think is a spaceship, but it's actually a nuclear satellite. It's a weapon. So it goes from like a shot of a weapon to the most advanced weapon that we've ever had.
Yeah. Question though, after they start using the bones as tools and as weapons, I didn't get the impression the conflict was still there for much longer after that. It felt like the ones that had the tools just became dominant, and then it became unified as one society.
Well, I mean, the ones that became dominant were the ones that got the water hole. It's still a war over territory.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying going past the war, though, it actually brought people together and made them advance. Like, it's not just about the conflict. The conflict actually ends because one of them gets the means to end it.
Right.
So I think that's a very important distinction. And I do think something that I don't think I ever noticed actually is when we get this ship going to Jupiter later on in the film, it only occurred to me for the first time watching it this time that it actually looks like a big bone, and I'm like, okay, that's intentional. That's intentional that it looks like the bone from the start of the movie. Very good.
It's also the same reason why in the hit television show Mystery Science Theater 3000, this spaceship looks like a bone.
How dare you? Right? Hit television show is reserved for one thing alone. You came up with your own phrase for Mystery Science Theater.
I think it fits.
How about the cult gem, Mystery Science Theater 3000?
I just wanted to piss you off.
Is this because I got salty earlier about the overture? Yeah. So some of the shots here, though, are stunning. I particularly like the shot looking up at the monolith with the sun kind of coming up over the top of it. So it looks like dawn, but it's dawn from the weird perspective of the sun coming up over the monolith rather than the horizon.
Yeah. I mean, we hear the music play every time that the monolith appears, but it seems to be very intense when you get the shot of like the sun touching it. Like there's something about that alignment that is like really sending out a signal or something.
It's very harsh.
Yeah.
I think actually before we talk about a lot of the other segments, I actually want to just sort of stick on the monolith and just go to the monolith scenes just to keep this sort of thematically tied, because I feel like a lot of the conversation here just would be better to keep this together. Because obviously then the monolith is found in the moon, and I do want to talk about the scenes leading to the moon, but we'll do that separately. And again, beautiful shots of all the, all these astronauts on the moon, and the visual's really great. It lets out this high pitch sort of sound, which we later find out is the signal going towards Jupiter, which is why they're sending a ship out there. And at the end of the film, of course, after the timey-wimey stuff, or at least just the visual of how time is advanced with the astronaut, with Dave, and the monoliths there. Because I think one of the things I liked about this, because in fact, that's not even the next time you see it. The next time you see it, it's floating in space.
It's floating around Jupiter, yeah.
Yeah. But, so he's lying in bed and he's pointing up at it, and then he turns into the Star Child. I loved it, and this is so weird. So because this scene, like I say, it's very weird and surreal. You've got this monolith that appears in front of the bed, and the camera cuts back to Dave, and he's turned into the Star Child. And the camera turns back to the monolith, and then the camera tracks in, and because the music started, I think it's actually on that track where the first real note of the music starts to hit. It's like da, da, and then it transitions to the final shots of the movie. But it makes the monolith, like, that moment feels so epic, and I actually almost started laughing this time watching it because of how ridiculous all this is on paper, but how emotional I feel watching it because it's just the filmmaking presents it in such a way that it makes it feel important.
It does, and I think using that song also, it's such an epic, like, big brass instrument. Like, you can sort of imagine this song being used like as a Superman theme. Not that we don't have a great one, we do have a great Superman theme, but you can sort of hear this like as a Superman theme. Like, it's just so big and epic and important, and like man will never be the same after this.
Man is transcended. So I think, I mean, everyone generally agrees that the monolith in some capacity is there as a sort of test to get to the next stage of evolution, and that it's on the moon. But the idea, okay, so the first time it appears, it encourages apes to start using tools, which starts the evolution of man. And then the next time it's on the moon, so we've had space travel to get to the moon, and then its next sort of test is out by Jupiter. You have to go even further. You have to get to out in Jupiter, and getting there proves that we're ready for the next stage of evolution, humanity. Whether or not you believe that this alien race, this intergalactic civilization created us, or just changed us by appearing in front of the apes, is maybe up for debate. I mean, if I was to lean towards one, I don't know there's a right answer here. This is just kind of what you really feel more than anything. I feel that they created us, and I think it's because the way that the Star Child's coming towards the Earth at the end, to me, feels like, I don't know, it feels like they're initiating the next phase. Like, okay, this our little test, our test subject. And the other reason actually is a thematic thing because of HAL. I think the purpose of HAL 9000 is because that's artificial life that we created, and we're not ready to create life, and it goes wrong. So I think that theme for me kind of almost, not confirms, but at least to me, it feels like a confirmation that we're created by so too. The aliens.
I think it is very much like we now are. I think this is like linked to. I don't really know philosophy, but I've heard that this is linked to like Nietzsche, and his belief that humanity right now is on like a wire. And yeah, so between, you know, what we prime evil, what we were, and what we're going to be, which is some sort of super being in the future. And I think the theme that at least Arthur C. Clarke was talking about in this is that the only thing stopping us is whether or not we destroy ourselves, and like our constant need to create new things and new life and new technology. And we want to create artificial intelligence, but will that be the thing that destroys us because it now also wants to be on top? So so long as we can, like,
I laugh at that because that particular point feels like just a fun science fiction idea, whereas everything else you just said feels like, oh yeah, this all feels very philosophical. But the idea, well, I mean, the fear that AI will definitely want to be on top and like take over.
Well, that's one of the things of life, right? Is the need to survive, is survival. So if we create artificial life that is clearly more capable than we are, because it could do things we can't do, then why wouldn't it like try to destroy us in order for its own survival? Because even though it's better than us, we still have the off switch. So if they can remove us, then that increases their chance of survival. So it's, I don't know, like it's still
I'm just having fun because I know you actually fear this, and I love it as a sci-fi concept, but I don't take it seriously like you do. So I'm poking fun at you right now for it.
I do. I think it is something we need to, you know, think about. Like, the movies have been warning us for a long time that creating artificial life is dangerous. And so long as we don't destroy ourselves, then we have a chance to you know, become super people.
As long as we're good parents, there's no reason why artificial life couldn't be a good child. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. So you have the Asimov way of thinking of robots.
I have the Terminator 2 way of thinking about robots. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, this is obviously something I've thought about, and I still think about, and I'm afraid of. And even though I allow it into my home, I have a Google device up there listening to me right now. Hello.
I think in terms of philosophy, yes, I have no doubt that philosophy like professors could probably write like a 10,000 page dissertation about 2001 and subjects and look at it from lenses that we could never even possibly, as a couple of laymen just sort of try to talk about a movie.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. It's a total philosophical movie. The moralist stuff's really interesting, and obviously other things have tried to then take that and do a more conventional way of telling that story of unlocking the next phase. But I think why I like it so much about how ambiguous it is because we wouldn't comprehend it, we wouldn't understand it. So when Dave goes through the infinite and it's the wacky light show, and it appears that he's taken to an alternate planet because it's all these weird colors, but you can clearly see like mountains, you can see water, and it feels
well, some of it is familiar, like there's some of it's like clearly okay, that's in Arizona.
Oh sure, but like it's all been altered color wise, and it's like distorted. And I think I don't think, because I mean obviously we just know that Jupiter is a gas giant, there's no way this is Jupiter, but I do genuinely believe though that this alien race have taken him to another planet, their home planet, or one of their home planets. And that's why when Dave arrives in the suit, he's already wrinkled because the journey's taken time. I think that's already the passage of time of them taking him to this place. And then of course he has his weird, you know, time lapse moment where he kind of keeps seeing his older self, then he transitions to the older one eating his dinner, and then he transitions to the really old one, the bed, who's dying.
Yeah, we are not doing this in order, are we?
No, I have no interest in doing it in order. It's fine. We're going to talk about other stuff. We're on the theme of the monolith.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things you have brought up, there are answers for them in the book version of this, but I'll just say, like, don't take the book as answers, because Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick wrote the screenplay, and then Arthur C. Clarke wrote the book as the movie was being made. So even though there are technically answers for this in the book series, Kubrick did his own thing, and there's no reason to believe that those answers are the same.
Another slight comparison to Twin Peaks is that, you know, David Lynch obviously is the one who's known for Twin Peaks, but it was co-created and a lot of it was written by Mark Frost. And Mark Frost did a book after Twin Peaks. They did another one after the new season called The Final Dossier, and it was like all these extra little bits of mythology and some little answers to things that the show never answered. And one or two of them, like, you don't know, like, okay, how much does David Lynch buy into all this? Like, does he believe all this shit that Mark Frost has put in this book? But there's a couple of things that actually slightly contradict things that were in the show. So it does kind of feel like, oh, it's nice, but is it really official? I mean, it's official in that it was released under the banner and whatever, but is it really what David Lynch believes?
I would say this is also pretty close to just his adaptation of The Shining. I mean, The Shining, probably so much of that film is just also visual and not really explained to you. But if you want answers, I suppose you could read the book. However, it's a different interpretation, so those answers might not be the same.
It's, you know, Stanley Kubrick definitely understood that filmmaking was a visual medium, and that's true here as well. We never get explanations for anything that's going on in the last 20 minutes. We just see it. We just see what's happening, and the weird sort of way that Dave kind of sees it himself. And I mean, because I do genuinely believe that he's not traveling through time. I do believe he lives out the rest of his life in that place. They've got him in, and I think what I love about the set design for this like fancy white room is that it's clearly based on Earth. They've given him like what looks like really fancy decadent furniture, little statues, but then the floor is this super white, like alien looking floor that you'd see in a spaceship. Yeah, it's all lights.
It's like a discotheque that doesn't have color.
And
I agree. It is just like a fishbowl. Like something has said, okay, we've reached into the mind of him and we've created something we think he'll be comfortable in. It's like when you have a lion in a zoo, like, okay, we'll put some sticks out there because lions like sticks.
Well, that's a fair comparison, but I would go further and say that it is legitimately like an alien has tried to recreate something on Earth, but has missed the vital details, so it just feels off to us. Like, it's not quite right. It's the way I always describe the room. The room's written by like an alien who's heard people speak in English, but never really quite understood it.
Yes.
This is Tommy Wiseau trying to recreate a human apartment.
Right. I mean, all the basics are there, but that scene is I mean, obviously, I love the way the film ends like this, and that's what I was talking about also when Kubrick was unsure of how to create this story of how do we portray time has passed, and I think it was the actor who plays Bowman who says, well, what if I just look at myself in the future, and then when I look back, I'm no longer there and I'm older. And that's what they went with. And it is, I sort of agree with you. The only thing that throws this off is the sequel. So if it's just the movie on its own, then yeah, he's definitely lived out all of those years.
No, which it is, because Kubrick didn't know about a sequel. He didn't know, like, this was made as its own thing. I choose
to believe that also. But we are going to watch the sequel, and the sequel takes place 10 years later, and Bowman's in it.
Okay. Well, the sequel's fan fiction. And I mean, to be fair, I kind of felt that way anyway before I've never seen the sequel.
Well, I mean, it's also kind of like The Shining with there is a sequel made for it, but it's sort of a sequel to the film because the same characters are there, but it's also a sequel to the book because Arthur C. Clarke wrote, 3 more books.
It's a wonky mess, is what you're saying.
Yes, it's we want to make a sequel to a masterpiece that doesn't need one, but there are books, so we could tell more stories if we wanted to.
Yes,
and we like money. So.
And clearly it was successful because they did the 3rd and 4th book, didn't they? No, they did not. Okay, so let's move on.
Well, I don't think the sequel is bad, but I do think of it as like something separate.
It's non-canon. It's the EU of 2001.
Sure.
A little fan fiction add-on that doesn't really work. So now let's go back to So just after the ape stuff, and this is the thing, it immediately cuts to the waltz. It's space, and we've got a shuttle going up to the station, and I don't think we can emphasize enough how much it basks in this. There's a lot of runtime spent just watching the ship spin and like slowly dock, and the music's playing.
And I think it's very hypnotic. Like there's something very bewitching about just the dance of watching how does this space shuttle, this Pan Am space shuttle, dock into a spinning wheel like space station.
And I have and I was thinking about, because obviously when I'm watching stuff for the show, especially when it's not something I'm watching for the first time, I am kind of like, okay, I'm looking for more things to analyze and more things to talk about. And I think there's actually a really simple little touch here in the transition from the ape stuff to this, which is we literally get the dawn of a tool. We get the first very tool, which is just a bone being used as a weapon to hit things and break things up and maybe stab something. And then we cut to this elegant waltz of space travel, which is the most advanced thing human civilization has made. And it's not like passionate. It's not like someone banging sticks together and making something happen. It's elegant. There's a stewardess like flirting with the captain. There's like a movie playing in the back of the chair, and then we cut to the outside, and it's like this elegant spin. It's a dance, and it's like the total opposite of an ape just smashing a bone against a rock. But it's to show how far we've come. It's to show this is the start of using a tool. And this is the most advanced tools we've ever made. And look how elegant it is, and look how simple it is. Which we've not even got to. I mean, we've had space travel, but we've never had it to a point where you can just book a flight to the moon if you want.
This is, it's depicted in a way like in 2001, at the time that this movie was made, this would just be normal. You can just book a flight to the moon.
Honestly, Joe, it's funny. I never think about this being set in 2001, but the one moment that sticks out to me is feeling like, oh, that feels a bit dated, is later on in the film when Hal says he was designed in 1992, and I went, oh, that feels ancient. 1992?
I mean, the title of the movie is 2001, so we know when the film takes place, or is supposed to be depicting. So it is like old future. But honestly, that's my favorite kind of sci-fi. I love going back in time to think, what would our future be like? And just getting it so wrong.
To be fair, there's a few things it gets right. I mean, I mentioned that he's asleep in his chair, but there's a movie playing in the screen in the back of the chair in front of him. Now, obviously, that's a really normal thing in planes now, but I can't imagine that was a normal thing in planes in 1968.
Yeah, I mean, even Frank and Dave are watching a news program on like what looks like an iPad. I don't know if it's built in or not, but it looks like it's been adjusted so that when they're looking at it, it's at an angle because they're eating also. So it looks like it might be an iPad.
I never got iPad, but I guess
tablet,
I guess the comparison I would make is to me it looked more like a computer monitor that can swivel and spin and be adjusted. But
I mean maybe because it does seem like it disappears. So
yeah,
I don't know.
But even that's kind of something that they didn't have at the time that is right. We did eventually get to that point. So but we have him dock and he's in again. We have this.
Well, on the flight too. There's a fun scene where the stewardess is walking and our guy Haywood Floyd is asleep and he's let a pen go and the pen is like floating around. And this was kind of interesting to watch like the behind the scenes stuff for it, because in order to do it, luckily double-sided tape had just been invented. So they just stuck it onto a glass panel and somebody was just moving it around so it looked like it was floating, so that when the stewardess comes up, she can just pluck it off of the glass and put it away in his pocket. It's just a fun little detail.
That's kind of amusing. And even the idea of the pen as well as a tool is, again, very elegant and just floating around. But when he comes into the space station and there's a couple of scenes here. He has a scene where he sits and talks to a couple of other hoity-toity people who are on their way back to Earth, and they hear where he's going in the moon, and like, oh hey, that's been very hush hush, and no one's talking about what's going on. And they think there might be like a pandemic breaking out in that part of the moon, and that's why it's all been.
Well, it's also showing that they're Russian, and this is made during the heightened Cold War fear, and this is they're also talking about like we have laws like treaties and stuff that are being broken here because, you know, one of our ships were trying to make an emergency dock there or something, and they were denied. And you know that breaks these very important contracts that we have between our nations still. So there is still like tension between countries that is depicted in this future.
Did you get tensions from that? I don't know if I got tensions necessarily.
Well, I mean, they seem to be scientists, so they're like, you know, this is something that we should know. You should be sharing this information with us. Like, if you guys know something, he says, "I'm not at liberty to say."
Yeah, but it's kind of, I took it. I mean, maybe you're right, but I took it more of like it's a top secret thing that's going on, and they want to know because, well, it's just we want to know. We're the public. We want to know what the top secret thing is.
Sure.
And he's trying to get the information out of him, and he's not giving it to him. I kind of took the whole, you know, part of the, you know, the law that's being broken is weird. I didn't take that as an accusatory. Oh, your government's being dicks about this. Like, what's going on? I took it more of a so this is how serious I've taken it. Is that they endangered the life of some of our pilots, and they turned out they're okay. They got somewhere safe, and that's fine. Because everything else after this didn't feel like they were hiding it from the opposition. It just felt like, no, we can't announce any of this to the public yet. Everything they talk about in the meeting scene, the boardroom, was all to the public.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I do think there is a little bit of tension in that scene still. But then, like, once we know what's happening, then those tensions are, like, clearly they've all worked together in order to be able to travel to Jupiter to do this next part.
I guess no, I got tension in the scene, but I didn't get it as like a Cold War, because part of what I was thinking this movie was doing is that it's, you know, it was made in the middle of the Cold War, so the idea that that's all done and, like, you know, the US and Russia are good friends now is kind of a future thing. It's like, hey, this is how things have changed in the future.
Well, it sounds like they still have some treaties and stuff that are in place in order to be like, so long as we don't break these treaties, we're friends, we're allies. But it seems like whatever has happened in the past there with the ship that was trying to land it in that area is clearly breaking some treaty, because they bring it up.
I forgot what I was going to say because you jumped in with a point. Never mind.
I thought you were done.
No, I had another point. I was building up to something and I forgot what it was.
Oh, big surprise.
What? Yes.
I don't feel bad about it.
Well, I feel bad about it. I had a point to make.
Well, if it's important, you'll remember it.
No, because we're going to go talk about different scenes. So it doesn't matter now. We'll move on. There's a point. Oh yeah, no. Here it is. This was it. The tension in the scene. I was trying to say, the tension I got in the scene from the other guy was more that he just wasn't getting anything out of him. He wanted him to talk to him as a colleague, as someone who was like, you know, he saw as a peer, as one of his equals, and our characters just saying, no, I'm not at liberty to discuss, and it creates this awkward tension because they're trying to offer him a drink, and one of the women sort of jumps in and says, "Sure, you don't want to have that drink?" He's like, I don't have time. Sorry, I have to go. I sort of took this as the setting up the secretive nature of it. I didn't really think of it too much of the Cold War implications beyond just, oh, everyone seems to be working together now, so it's showing that we're past the Cold War. Mainly because I don't think the rest of the movie like plays into like any potential tensions that still might exist. I mean, if it's there as kind of like a little Easter egg, I guess.
Yeah, I think so, because we do get some stuff in, like we see different flags for like China, Russia, America, and something else, I think. Probably England or something.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to say something. Yeah, so I just got the impression that everyone was kind of, you know, together on this, and maybe has been for some time, was the gist I got. Especially since when he first goes up to the station and the sort of the person at the reception is like getting him in, she's got literally like 6 buttons with languages, and there's a lot more than 6 languages, but these 6 languages are the 6 buttons she's got, and Russian was one of them, English was one, and then there was, you know, a few other ones. So I think it's given us that. We get him phoning home to his daughter.
Stanley Kubrick's daughter.
Was that Stanley? Do you know what, I'm going to be honest here.
Huh.
She's not that good.
She's fine.
Her acting here was a little rough.
Oh, I thought she was cute.
I didn't realize that was his daughter. Now I'm just going to straight up say it. Nepotism is a thing, and I think Kubrick may be a little guilty of it here because she's not very good.
Oh, I think she's all right. She's just, I don't know. Like, kids are awkward on phones.
I felt she was I could feel her being directed, and like her confusion wasn't what her dad on screen was saying. It was just her like, react to this, say this, honey. And she would say, yeah, I want a telephone, or some such. Anyway.
I don't know. I thought she was fine. I mean, kids are awkward on phones when, like, they're handed a phone, like, here, talk to grandma. Like, hi. Like, they're weird. So it would make sense that they're more weird on a video call.
It's her dad, though. This isn't some distant relative she doesn't see that much.
Yeah. Kids are awkward on phones.
Yes, but I
think it's fine.
I'm not critiquing she's awkward on the phone. I'm critiquing that the awkwardness feels like bad acting. Someone can act.
I don't know. We see lots of bad actors, and especially bad child actors. I think she's totally fine in this.
Like, I know you think this is perfect, right? And I'm not trying to rain in your parade. I'm just saying the little girl's not that good. And the one scene she's in, she's not that good. That's all I'm saying.
Let's move on.
The boardroom scene where he basically explains that they can't talk to the press. You're all under NDA. He doesn't use that phrase. I'm just calling it that because that's what we call it now. But you're going to talk about this. Not much to say in the scene itself beyond what we already have. But one of the things I really like is the creepy music starts coming back in as they're on their way to the dig site where this thing's been found. And they mention it's been there for like 4 million years. And when they get to the dig site and they're going down, we get the creepy music. But one of the things that I really loved is that I noticed before they actually see them on the ground, as the shuttle's kind of like landing and docking, there's a great shot from like inside like the control room of the base at the dig site, and like the guy who's operating the controls for the door or whatever, and he's just kind of in silhouette looking out at the ship, but like it's so ominous, and then you've got the music rising. Mm-hmm. As the shuttle's coming in, it was really setting a mood in a way that felt like as they were getting closer and closer to the monolith, it was kind of rising and rising as it was getting there. Before we even started to see it, before we even got
he's lit in a way that is almost sinister. Not that I think that he is. I think it's just that something is about to happen, something important, and even that like looks ominous. But just the way he's lit, like mostly in shadow.
Like a lot of the shots in this movie, it's particularly the space stuff. It sits on the shot of him watching the ship coming down for a long time as this ominous, music's playing, and it really builds a feeling that, again, it's really confident. It's the sort of thing where, like, most movies try to hold a shot this long with just some music to try and create some tension, it would probably suffer and it wouldn't work very well.
Isn't it so nice to watch a movie that does hold on to a shot for a while and just let you figure out what's happening?
Not cutting around every 2 minutes.
Yeah,
I said 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
It's so nice. Like it makes the I think that's what helps. Like, it is a long film and there isn't really a whole lot that is plot wise.
Yeah, do you know what's funny?
It does
is that
people feel quick.
People say that this movie drags on, they think it's boring or whatever, and
I have total opposite.
Well, this is what I'm getting to, is that I actually agree with what you were just saying there, is that because the scenes last a long time, after a couple of scenes, if you check how far you are in the movie, you're like, oh wait, 40 minutes have passed. how did that happen? It has the opposite effect with me, because the scenes themselves will actually feel like they're taking any longer to me, because there is a truth to this where you could take, because we cut to the Discovery, the Jupiter ship, right? We cut to that at about the 55 minute mark. It's in that range. You could take that first 50 to 55 minutes and do it in about maybe 10 if you really wanted to. You could condense that down to just the bullet points of what it's doing. You could Michael Bay that shit and it would be done in no time at all. You would just go boom, 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 plot point, plot point, plot point. But no, we bask in the arrival to the station. We bask in the trip from the station to the moon base. We bask in the trip from the base to the dig site. and it's all about getting to the monolith and getting to the thing.
So much of these scenes are just like full of tiny little details that keeps your mind busy. Like even the one scene where like you're looking at like how they use the toilet. They have to like follow 10 steps before they can go to pee. Like, what if they have to pee right away? Like, that's actually kind of a funny scene. But like, or when they're going from the space station to the monolith, they're like eating sandwiches and they're talking about how like real they're getting. Like, these sandwiches are getting a lot better these days. And like, do you have ham? Like something that used to be ham, like something they call ham anyway. Like, oh, they have synthetic food. Like, this is really interesting.
And
all the like little minor details. Like, how do they live in this world?
And that's a throwaway line as well. That's like a one scene throwaway moment that didn't even need to be there. Like the idea that they have synthetic food is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter, really.
No, but it just adds to the world, like, and how long we spend with Dave and Frank on the station. Like, it's important that we know what they're doing there. Like, this is a long journey. And they're spending it basically isolated, and they're the right people for the job because they're totally calm and they love their hobbies. But I like seeing how they live day to day on this space station or on this Discovery.
Yeah, the ship. Yeah. No, like I think the time it takes to do all this stuff is what makes the movie the movie. And I don't. Again, a movie is more than just the plot details, which I think is kind of and I'm going to be a little insulting here. I think idiots don't understand sometimes that a movie isn't just what plot A point to plot B point to plot C point, it's so on and so on. That's not all that makes a movie. Some movies are more about basking in the moments and the feeling of the scene than just about getting through the plot points as quickly as possible. It's not like, a movie is not just an economy of how to quickly get through the story. I mean, don't get me wrong, you have to be economical with certain things and what you're doing. Kubrick, in choosing to tell his story at this pace, means that he's having less plot overall, for example. You know, but that's okay. If the point of the movie is just to go from, the moon to Jupiter, because we skipped 18 months ahead and we're on the Discovery, and we meet our two astronauts who are awake. Everyone else who's going to be there to research whatever they find when they get there is asleep, and it becomes kind of clear as the movie goes on. It's not obvious immediately, but through conversations with Hal, and then obviously when it's eventually revealed to Dave, that they don't actually know why they're going out there. They think they're just going to Jupiter because, hey, first mission to Jupiter, because it's time that we did that as a society. They don't actually get there because we don't see was it Haywood, the character from the moon stuff. We see him on videotape. I say tape, but we see him on video.
It's a pre-recording. Yeah,
it's a message. We see that like way later in the movie because he's missing for. Once we cut away from the moon and we go cut ahead 18 months, that's those characters gone. We don't see them again, other than that video message. So,
it's easy to not expect. It seems like, okay, we've gone from the dawn of man to 2001 or maybe 2000 to our next stage. So like, it's easy to just think that those characters would never come back.
And this is it's
actually a surprise when Haywood shows up again. It's
a very unconventional story, actually, when you break down into just the idea of a protagonist, because this movie doesn't really have a main character. And it's not supposed to have a main character because...
No, I think most people, when they think of the film, though, they think of the third part. They think of Dave versus Hal.
It's the longest part, and he's the one who sort of like finds the thing at the end and goes through to the end of the story. But the reason why we do disregard characters and just move ahead, because the whole idea being that the ape at the start of the movie is no more or less important than Haywood in the second part, who's no more or less important than Dave. The whole point is that humanity as a whole are moving on, and of course Haywood wouldn't be the one who goes on the big mission to Jupiter, because that's not necessarily who he is. It's not what he's trained for. It's not his thing.
If there was a lesser director and they made it today, then it would be.
It would be. And
he would somehow be related to the ape.
And I guess the point I'm trying to actually make here is that this movie could be a complete disaster in just about anyone's hands, because most filmmakers, if they don't follow the rules, and one of the rules is we have a protagonist we care about, and we're emotionally attached to, then your story doesn't
It's a
work.
bad movie.
Yeah. The story just doesn't work. And here, it does work. And I'm someone who will be one of the first in many a movie that says, well, this doesn't work because I don't care about the protagonist. And I don't care about a protagonist in this movie. I mean, not that I dislike Dave. You know, he's fine, but it's not about him. It's about like
Humanity.
It's about something larger. Yeah, it's about something more. And only someone who is a master of their craft can have that kind of focus and have me not feel like I'm watching like a mess. Like I'm watching something that still feels like it knows what it's doing. And that's impressive, and I think that's why it feels so special, because every so often you'll get a director or a creator or a storyteller who can genuinely do something different, but it doesn't end up feeling like some experimental weirdo thing that didn't work, or it doesn't feel like something where I don't get attached or care. Like, I do care. I get very emotionally invested in this movie, but I get invested in like the larger themes that it's playing with. I get invested with it as a mythical allegory or a mythical science fiction think piece more than I do a story with a character who might win or lose by the end. So yes, I guess I'm trying to say it's impressive.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Like everything about this film, like when you just step aside and look at it, is as like as a movie and comparing it with other films, like it does stand apart. Like it does feel different and special, and like there's something otherworldly about the film. Like you're not watching a traditional movie. You're not watching something with a traditional score or traditional lead character. Like it is a very special film that I don't think can be recreated.
Yeah, and just to sort of summarize this point, like technically, from the rule book perspective, it's wrong. Everything about it is wrong. From a standard filmmaking and storytelling rule book, it's wrong. But that's so, because I always say this, like all the rules in filmmaking can and probably should occasionally be broken, but you have to understand why you have them in the first place. And clearly Stanley Kubrick knows what he's doing, but you know, it's like, and the simple one that I always use as an example is there's something called the line, right, or the 180-degree rule, some people call it. But the idea that if you've got two characters on screen, you always shoot them from the same side, right? No matter how many times you just change the camera angle from close-ups or whatever, you always shoot them from the same side, because it can be a little jarring and confusing if you jump to the other side of the room and shoot from that direction, because they'll swap sides. You know, from the viewer's perspective, they'll flip. The best example of that is like a sports game. Like when you're watching a sports game, they always have the cameras all on one side of the court or the field or the pitch, because it would be really confusing if all of a sudden the camera was over there, because it'd feel like they were shooting in the wrong direction. Yeah,
someone who's running to the left is now running to the right. You're like, wait, that's my brain's broke.
So typically you stick to the one side. You don't cross the line. That was the way I was told. I know a lot of people call it the 180-degree rule. But you can break it, and then often you can. Sometimes it can be because you want it to feel a little jarring, because you understand that that's what it's going to feel like, so you want a jarring moment, because that works with the story. Or you want to reveal something on the other side of the room. The example I always think of is at the start of X-Men First Class, of all things. There's a scene where young Magneto's talking to like a Nazi, and it's all shot from one side, and he's like having this sinister conversation, but when it crosses the line, you see there's like a secret room with lots of blades like behind the glass wall. But it's hidden for the first half of the scene, because it's all from this one side. So it's almost like it's almost like if you imagine like a sitcom, it's cutting to the audience side. You see the audience.
It's funny you say that, because I was just thinking of, WandaVision came out, and WandaVision is very much shot like a sitcom, but there are moments in it where there's something real comes in, and it does do that. It changes the angle of the camera to where you're looking at it from the opposite side now. Like something is breaking into it. Like it's supposed to be jarring. Yeah,
and that one goes beyond breaking the line. That'll go from your typical sitcom wide shots to all of a sudden you've got a really shallow depth of field close up of a character's face, and it's very intentional, and that's a really good example. It very much
takes you out of the world that you were in. So
that's a really good example of them knowing the rules of both what they're pretending to be, but also what it actually is going to be, and using it to make us feel it in the camera work.
Yeah.
So, but that's like a very technical one. Obviously, a lot of these things we're talking about are storytelling rules, but they're all there to be broken if you understand why you're breaking them and what you're doing with them. And this is just a case of like the concepts are so otherworldly that it's bigger than a character.
I think another film you can compare it to is La Jetée. La Jetée is very much like a visual medium of we're just showing you, so much so that we're mostly just showing you pictures with like a narration over top of it. But every shot is so important, and even though it's just a still image, there's so much you can take away just from staring at those images for so long. Like everything is important in it. And that's also a film, I'd say film. It's a short film, but it definitely breaks rules in order to tell a story that is not traditional.
Yeah. But obviously it follows other rules that this one doesn't say. So this one doesn't use photographs, but that one does have a protagonist who you do emotionally get attached to. Yeah, so
that's true. Although in the beginning of this movie, it is actually still photographs of Africa.
Oh, that's
with
fair.
Like sound effects over top.
Yeah. Well, I think that's more of just a filmmaking like convenience than it is like a stylistic choice. I think.
Sure.
I'll say, but yeah, but yeah. So we're on the Jupiter, or we're on the Jupiter. I keep calling the ship the Jupiter. We're on Discovery, which is annoying to say now because Star Trek started using that for one of theirs.
I don't find it annoying.
I keep expecting Michael Burnham to pop out of a duct or something. So we get the Hal stuff, and the Hal stuff's obviously very entertaining. It's the stuff that I think most people remember from the movie if they don't think about it in like a larger scale. Yeah,
it's the part that becomes like a horror film.
Yeah, it's the story of the computer. HAL 9000 makes a mistake, and one of the things I never really picked up on necessarily. Until I was sort of digging into it a little bit before we started, because obviously I've always gotten the idea that okay, this is an AI that we created. We weren't maybe ready to create a life form, and it goes badly. This is almost like a cautionary tale of why we shouldn't be doing this shit. I saw some other interpretations that it's about a competing life form who might get to the monolith first and might actually evolve instead of us.
I've never thought of that, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't lean towards that, but it's a fun idea. I like the thought process behind it.
Yeah, because Hal does know exactly what their mission is.
Yeah, he's been told to keep it, and that was one of the things that I found out, that apparently in the book, the idea of a paradox in Hal's programming is, and that's what he's basically feeling stressed, and it's what causes his breakdown, is the idea that
it is actually human error. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the idea that he has been told not to lie to any of the crew. If they ask the questions, but he's also been told not to tell them about this mission, the secret mission.
There's two conflicting orders for Hal, so that it causes a malfunction.
So yeah, he actually is right. It's human error, even though it sounds like he's covering for himself in the scene where he's saying that.
An interesting thing in the movie also is when they're playing chess, because Kubrick is actually a chess master, and
of course
apparently this is on purpose, but Hal is playing chess with Frank and says, "Sorry, but you've made a mistake, Frank. Looks like I'm going to win in these 3 moves." And Frank says, "Oh, you're right. So I guess I resign." But apparently Hal has made a mistake in the chess game also. So that's actually the first indication that something's wrong. But because none of us are
Can I give you a counterpoint maybe here?
Sure.
So it could be a sign that he's made a mistake, Hal that is, or it could be him seeing if he can get away with it intentionally.
Like a test.
Yeah, and it's actually the human who just sort of like yeah. Maybe the point of it being that the human's too trusting of the technology and doesn't question it enough and doesn't try and think about it. But anyway, Hal makes a mistake, and whatever causes him to make a mistake about this, the dish, the satellite relay.
Yeah, so like battery is about to fail. It looks like a car battery, but I don't know what it is exactly.
Yeah. But
some crucial piece of equipment for communication will inevitably fail in like 72 hours or something.
So they go out and get it, and they do some testing on it. It's like, oh no, this is incorrect. It's fine. Like it's going to be fine. And Hal, feels bad, and I say feels bad in the sense that he says
he says it's based on human error.
Yeah, but in the sense that he tries to be apologetic and says, you know, do you trust my ability to continue operating the ship, blah, blah, blah. And this is what prompts the two characters to pretend that they're okay with it and be all friendly. But then Dave comes up with a reason to, wait, let's go check out pod number 2. We have to go look in the pod. And it's basically so they can talk without Hal hearing them. And they do some testing. They sort of yell, Hal, you know, spin the pod a couple of times. And he doesn't do it. And of course, this is actually where the intermission kicks in. It's the cliffhanger of them talking about turning off Hal. And Hal can't hear... Well, I'll just explain what this is first. Hal can't hear them, but then the end of the scene, which is what cuts to the intermission, is a very stark cliffhanger, actually, is the point of view of Hal watching their lips move to give us the impression that, oh, he's reading their lips. He is understanding what they're saying.
And it's totally silent.
Yeah.
I love the shot inside the pod also, where it's just the two actors talking to each other, and then in the middle you could just see the watchful eye of Hal in the background. Like, and at first it's not as sinister, but then once you get this shot of from Hal's perspective, you're like, oh, this is going to go badly. And all the dialogue in it is very, like, nothing is wasted in the dialogue between the two people. They're talking about, like, we don't know how would react to the news of.
Yeah, because that's one of the lines is, you know, like, we've never had to turn one off before. It says, well, yeah, but we've never had one made a mistake before. Yeah, but therefore we don't know how he's going to react if we try and turn them off. Like, he might care.
But we'd have to do this in secret, like, without Hal knowing, because he might not want to be turned off, especially if he has, you know, been programmed to make sure that this mission is successful, and he doesn't think it could be successful without him. Also, there is a bit of arrogance that comes through in his personality, because he does seem to have one, that he might get defensive.
Part of me also, because this is the other thing, is that because quite quickly after all this, he kills all the sleeping crew that aren't awake yet. He kills them all. And we kind of, obviously the natural instinct is to read that as, oh, he's went proper man now and he's killing all the humans because the humans will just ruin things and he's the correct one. And maybe that feeds into the idea that he wants to get to the monolith for himself and, you know, see what it is.
Yeah, maybe he's interpreted his directive as to just get to the monolith, not get humans to the monolith.
That's what I was going to suggest. Is I was trying to think, can you argue everything he does is that he's never actually faltered, he's never actually went mad, he's following everything to the letter, and it's all humans' faults of how they've programmed him. That, you know, there's nothing in there about not killing the crew, for example.
Yeah, honestly, that's always how I've interpreted it. Like, it's always just been like he's been programmed with this one thing, and that he needs to carry that out. And humans are just going to get in the way of that. They can compromise things, especially if they're planning on turning him off. And I like the idea that they have to replace the battery again, the alleged faulty battery, and just wait for it to fail. So in order to prove to Hal that he's malfunctioned, because it won't fail. And when that doesn't happen, he won't have any explanation for it.
Yeah, I haven't quite read it that way typically because of the way he does eventually, you know, quote unquote die. I've always read Hal as being basically becoming very self-preservation. He seems to fear his death and doesn't want to be turned off. So it's always became more personal to me as it's went on, and the way that it feels more like
it does come off like a madman, like at the end, especially because when his brain is getting removed, he's reverting back to like simpler programs. He
sings the song from when he was created, and his speech starts slowing down as Dave is pulling out the memory sticks.
And he says things like he doesn't want to die, basically.
Yeah. So I've always taken it that he did it. I'm afraid. So I do like thinking about it in a way that, you know, maybe he never actually technically goes mad. He is just kind of following things to a T. But I have to admit, when I watch it, I do kind of go down the path of, no, he has become self-aware enough that he fears death, and he's doing this out of selfishness rather than, you know, programming. Actually,
even when he's working when he's supposed to, he sounds like he's got this big ego.
Before we move on, I just wanted, before I forget to mention this, when they go out of the pod to talk so they can't hear him, I love the sudden, like, the room noise all disappears when they shut the pod door. It just sort of, when it cuts inside, the sound just goes away, and it's just their voices. And it's one of those things where I don't think you realize how much room noise is in certain locations until you cut to without it.
Yeah.
And
that's all noise. That ambient noise has all been added into the film. So yeah, it's great. It's a great detail. I also love the detail that you see the explosive bolts. Caution explosive bolts on the hatch.
Yeah, technically all ambient noise in every film is always added into the film.
Well, yeah, of course.
Just
that was the point I was making.
FYI. Often to cover up things perhaps that they can't get rid of in the sound mix.
Yeah, apparently the actual like set that they built for the hamster wheel is like they have all those screens. They're all like projections, and all those projections are like incredibly loud. So like on the outside of it is just a ton of noise that they did have a lot of challenge keeping out of the film.
Which does mean not only do you have to ADR all the dialogue, it means every single sound you do get to hear in the film has to be added in on its own separately from the set recording. Although one of the things you do from locations you can use the audio from, now admittedly, for movies this doesn't really apply as much, especially big budget ones, because big budget ones will just Foley everything, they'll just create everything. For lower budget stuff, one of the things that you do is that when you record a scene in it may be an apartment, it might be in a park, it may be wherever, is you record, everyone calls it something different. We just called it recording white noise. You'd record just nothing for like a minute, and it would give the sound mixer like some just blank noise that matches the blank noise that's underneath all the dialogue and the other shots, so that you could use that to patch in any gaps that you'd end up having in the sound mix. That's a very sort of low rent way of doing it. Big budget movies will just create everything from scratch and just have everything perfect, but that's the lo-fi way of doing it. I'm pretty sure here they couldn't do anything like that though, because there's so much noise. See any scene in a movie where they had to like fire a fan at the actor for the hair to blow, like everything's ADR'd. Yeah, that's all very loud. You can't use the audio from that. So anyway, so, but that's what the intermission is. It's this Hal's going to be up to something. He knows they're after him. So how's he going to react?
It's funny when the intermission comes in, because every time I'm like, there isn't that much left in the movie. Like, why is the intermission now?
So there's an hour left. There's a full hour left.
But that hour goes by so fast.
Oh, it does, yeah. Because Hal kills the second guy, the one that's not Dave, right?
Frank. Yeah.
Frank, right? He's in the yellow suit, and I love that you don't see it. It does this sort of snap close up to Hal's eye. It does it like twice. It sort of does like a sort of quick snap in, then it zaps in a bit more. So it's just like a do, and it goes into his eye close up, and then you just see the yellow spacesuit floating by the window.
Yeah, with like, his air tube's been cut.
Yeah. And of course Dave's I need to get out in a pod and go and try and save him, and that becomes a sequence. He's literally in a pod and he's got the arms out and he's trying to grab him, and it's this very slow, methodical, and all this looks great.
Yeah, I also love like every time they're in the spacesuit, we don't get any music, we don't get any sounds, we just get breathing. That's the only thing you hear. And like when the breathing does change because of something happening, like it does cause you to like lean in and get a little bit more white knuckled. Like, what's
and
happening
it is relatively accurate. At least from my own understanding, there is one or two little things that I've learned, from modern stuff that is a little inaccurate in this. The one that stuck out to me, and this is because I've been watching The Expanse, and The Expanse is kind of notorious for being very accurate with its space stuff.
Sure.
Is so Dave tries to save him, obviously doesn't work, but he's coming back to the ship and Hal won't open the pod doors. He's like, no, I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. That's where the famous line comes from. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. And Dave's not got his helmet, so he has to like go to the emergency airlock and essentially just blast his way in from the pod. So he's closed the gap. He's put it right up to the side of the ship, but he's effectively having to make a small trip through space, right? As tiny as it may be, where there's no atmosphere until he shuts the airlock door, and you can see him like sort of like hold his breath. And he's like, his cheeks are all puffed out. Apparently that's the worst thing to do.
No, it's like having an emergency ascension into like from underwater. Your lungs will expand. You want everything out.
honestly, this movie's a lot more like in the ballpark accurate for its time period than you'd expect.
Right.
So
I heard that they did have some like NASA scientists that they worked with quite a bit on the film, and one of the things that they talked about, like, could somebody survive in space in theory for a few seconds, and they said keep it under 15 seconds, and I think people will buy it.
No, apparently you can, because one of the things I learned, because there was a scene in Expanse, and I won't spoil anything because it's a wonderful show that everyone should go watch. But there was a scene where someone was exposed in space for, it was in slow motion, so it was hard to tell like how long it was, but you know, someone was just sort of in space for probably at least 10 seconds, and there was a lot of discussion of like, yeah, but wouldn't they just like freeze to death like immediately and stuff like that. And I learned a little bits of information that was kind of cool. One is that yes, you would freeze, but you don't freeze instantly like some movies show it. And the reason for that is because there's nowhere for the heat to go really, so it takes a while for your body to actually cool down, despite the fact that space is freezing. Also, yeah, holding your breath is actually the worst thing you can do. You don't want to hold your breath. You want to just kind of be calm. You want to be you want your blood to be oxygenated. Blah blah blah. It was just little things I was learning, because it was one of those things where I just trust the show usually, but this felt a little bit weird because I'm like, oh, this feels a bit fantastical. But it's actually the other movies and TV that are who present this has been very accurate, have been getting it wrong. So I was like, oh, okay, I have to train myself a little bit to know this.
Cool.
But anyway,
I mean, yeah, it's important to know that this movie came out before we even went to the moon.
well, I think it's a year before the moon landing, and let's be honest, that's why there's so much conspiracy theories about Kubrick directing the moon landing, because I mean, the scene on the moon with the monolith looks quite good. I mean,
It does. It doesn't look like the lunar landing that we get from, Armstrong.
no, from Armstrong. Are you saying that Neil Armstrong directed the moon landing?
Well, he and Buzz, yeah.
Yeah. Who put the camera
They
down?
definitely we're filming up there.
Who put the camera down? The other director, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which one you're looking at. Maybe it's Neil who's got the flag. Probably Buzz. Buzz is like, hey, you got to step on the moon first. Let me plant the flag.
Oh dear. That said, Neil did get to say one of the most iconic sentences in the history of humankind. So, you know, you can't hear the word mankind without thinking of the moon landing. Now, that's all Neil.
I bet he liked this movie.
I'm sure. I mean, they were literally training for the moon when this came out. I'm sure they all went to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a movie about people going to space. Oh, we should all go watch that. They probably had a good chuckle all the little things that they know is inaccurate because they've been training for every day for months and months.
Well, anyway, poor Frank is gone.
Yes, poor Frank is gone. So yeah, we get the sequence of Dave again walking in his spacesuit. No, and this is a detail that I'd forgotten, but he's just grabbed the nearest helmet, so he's got the red suit on, but his helmet's green.
Right, because he's left his helmet on there. And I also like the idea that he's wearing the suit inside of the ship because presumably Hal has gotten rid of the oxygen at this point. Like, the movie doesn't explain everything to you, but there's so much detail there that you can just get from watching it without listening.
That's one of those things that I think the reason why I instantly assumed that's why he was wearing the suit inside is because of other sci-fi from the last 50 years that have really trained me to know these things. But if I had seen this in 1960, I probably would have understood that immediately.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe
it's neat. But yeah, he goes in and pulls out the memory stick things. But when he's finished pulling them out, the video auto plays the message about what this mission is, where they're going. The first ever life that's not of Earth has been uncovered, or the first sign of life, I should say, has been uncovered. And then
it's Dave by himself.
Yeah, and then we basically cut to the Beyond the Jupiter section of the film, and we get a very trippy light show, which leads to another planet, like I said. But it's not, because very early on you get the vertical sort of down the middle with the walls of light coming past you, and that's really trippy. But for some reason, when it goes horizontal, it feels even more trippy, afterwards. But there's a lot going on. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think there is, but it wouldn't surprise me if someone said that technically there's something in here that counts as CGI. Obviously not in the way that we think about it, but if it's like technically comes from a computer. So therefore,
yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
Me.
I think it's just some sort of photography like trick.
I think it is, yeah.
Involving like plates and stuff. But yeah, it's a very, trippy sequence. It's, other than Hal, it's probably the thing the movie is most remembered for. And I think this is the part of the film that makes or break it for people. Like, I don't like that it's not telling me what's going on. And I don't like this movie. Or
you say that. I've got a feeling a lot of people tap out with how long it takes the spaceship stuff to happen near the start.
Yeah, it is a slow film. Yeah. So if you're not into that, then yeah.
I like a lot of the people who don't like slow films. I think people who
even like movies that don't like this film, I think it's because of the end. I think there are people who like film lovers who don't like this movie. I'm just saying a lot of people who don't like slow movies have already tapped out long before we get to Beyond Jupiter. Right. I'm not talking about Transformers fans.
So
I'm talking about the people like the movie critics and stuff who there are people who don't like the film, and I think it's because of the ending.
Madness.
I agree.
Madness. The ending is just like, I love how ballsy it is. I love like I said, I was describing it earlier, but it literally goes monolith, Dave pointing, monolith, Starchild, what? Monolith. And then it cuts, it tracks into the monolith, into the black, and then we're back at Earth. The music's bombastically going.
Dave has returned home.
And this giant star child is coming towards Earth. And whether or not you take this more literal, where humanity is going to change because on a physical level, because change has come, Dave has come back, essentially embodying this mass like species change, or it's more of a, because I think the more straight way to read this is that it's more saying that humans are ready for intergalactic society. And that the aliens are essentially sending a message back to say, hey, we're here, you're now part of the intergalactic world, and we'll be in touch, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but I think, obviously with the Star Child thing, there is a sense of rebirth. And
there is, yes.
He's come back with something special in order to make us be able to get to that next stage.
Which is why that's where you come back to, I think the aliens actually created us, and it's like sort of like giving us the next stage of the evolution.
Right.
Beyond.
Yeah, they were just waiting for us to become interesting by the time we got to the moon, and then like, all right, here we go.
Because I think if you read it
a little push.
If you read it as that we were not created by aliens, and they just sent a monolith to like change us and to see what happened to us and sort of for us to prove. I think if you start with that idea that we weren't created and they just interfered, then it makes sense that the ending is, oh, you're ready to be part of the intergalactic community. That so you're going with that line of thinking, I think those two things go together neatly. If you're going with the idea they created us and that the ending is unlocking the next stage of human evolution, then rebirth, and Dave is reborn as this giant ass baby. Which is a very cool visual, actually. Again, in a time before CG, in a time where this was an optical trick with a doll or maybe an actual, I don't know if it's a baby. No, it's too still to be an actual baby. But
it looks a little odd. So I don't think so. I think it's a doll for sure. Plus its eyes move a little bit.
Yeah. It's a hell of a visual, but it's such a what the F visual that I can't imagine what's seeing this in 1968 before the internet was alive and people could like talk about their ideas and there was like analysis everywhere and people like us on YouTube talking about it. Like, what did you do in 1968 when you walked out of the theater and went,
you probably got the book?
Yeah, what the
went, wait, this isn't quite right.
What the hell was that? What did I just watch? What's going on?
That's funny because I think there's in the trivia there was a quote from apparently Rock Hudson saw the movie and came out and screamed, what the hell did I just watch?
And I get that reaction because it's definitely like, I think at least film fans are more used to the weirder stuff now. We're used to, David Lynch is a thing. He's basically created a genre that we refer to as Lynchian. We're used to weird art house movies that are ambiguous and leave us guessing. But I think in 1968, if you're going to see a Stanley Kubrick movie who's done, not Full Metal Jacket yet, but like
Paths of Glory.
Paths of Glory, Spartacus. Clockwork Orange was obviously more cerebral, but wasn't necessarily hard to follow. I think you got to see one of these big new directors' new movies, and you've got this, and you leave the theater going, "What? What was that? What's going on? I don't think I understand it. Does anyone else understand it?"
Well, yeah. I mean, I think famously he did not explain anything when he was asked questions about the ending of the film. He said, "I don't." He said on the what is it? The Mona Lisa. There's no explanation from Da Vinci on how to interpret the painting. Like it's there.
That's a little bit egotistical to throw that comparison out.
Like maybe, but at the same time, like he is probably going to go down as like, if not the greatest director of all time, like one of the masters.
Oh no, he absolutely is. And I mean, I don't really care about paintings that much, so I mean it's fine, but it is a little bit egotistical to say about yourself. You're like, well, Da Vinci never like it's kind of funny to me. I don't know.
It is a bit presumptuous, sure.
I don't know who the Da Vinci of podcasts is for me to compare us to, but
yeah, I don't know.
Don't throw out any names.
Conan O'Brien.
It'll be criticised no matter who it is. Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's got a great podcast.
Sure. We'll go with it. But yeah, that's basically the movie. I mean, it's special. It feels like you're watching. I mean, you said it was like a musical performance, and I can kind of see that comparison. It's got kind of a symphony kind of feel to it in a weird way. But with film still being and visuals still being the essential part. Without the visuals, it's nothing. And it needs the visuals because there's so little dialogue that you need visuals to tell the story. Yeah, absolutely.
It's an odyssey, right? It's a journey.
It is. There's there's Homer's Odyssey and there's Spacey's Odyssey, and it's the Space
Well, I have heard that the Homer's Odyssey was very much like what they were working off of when they created the script. I mean, obviously, Arthur C. Clarke had his short stories that he had already written. Like Kubrick said, I want to make a sci-fi movie with you, and I really like that short story you made, The Sentinel, which is basically the story of mankind finding the monolith on the moon, and then it's sending out a signal, and then the story's over. And so they just expanded from that. But also like the idea of, I guess, Odysseus was like a great bowman, and Dave's last name is Bowman, and then the Cyclops is represented by Hal with the single watchful eye as like the monster of the film. So there are some parallels, and then of course the journey into space, into the unknown, and then trying to meet your gods or possibly your creators, and then the journey ending returning to your home, Earth. So I mean there are some parallels there for sure, and it is not a secret that there's that was one of the biggest influences of the movie, that they even used it in the title.
Yes. As someone who doesn't actually know what the Homer's Odyssey story is, I just took a lot of for granted there that you were saying things that were also in that. But yes, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. But some of the details are missing.
Well, it came out when you were in high school, I think, right?
Sure.
Oh, come on. I'm talking about something that's ancient. I know.
You're threatened by my intelligence, so you have to make an age joke.
I'm not... What? How dare you?
Just kidding. We're friends.
I feel like I've been humiliated, quite frankly. I'm supposed to wrap up this podcast, and I don't really know how. We're supposed to rate the movie. Rate 2001.
Well, yeah. It's. I mean, it's obviously a 10 because that's what our scale goes to. But I do think this movie goes beyond the scale. I think this film is unrateable. You cannot assign value to it. It is the film that which all films will be compared to.
Oh, that's a fair statement. And that's based on something you yourself said earlier, or that conversation we had earlier, which is that this does not follow the conventions of film, so therefore it's unfair to compare regular films to it.
Well, all right. It's unfair to give this film a rating.
No, that's not true. I mean, you give it a 10, it's a 10.
I've said that before. I've said that this movie is unrateable. I'll give it the 10 because that's the greatest one that we can give it on our scale that we have created, but it is beyond 10.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, it's 10. I mean, what you have from me? I don't know. And it's not like this is the first time I've rated it either. I've rated it a 10 before. This viewing did not lower it in any way, shape, or form. It's a special film, and yeah, here we are. So, and if you've made it this far into the review, you can. What word what should you put?
Daisy?
Why Daisy?
Daisy, Daisy.
Oh, the song. Okay.
Give me your answer, do.
Okay, put the word Daisy if you made it this far. Tara's going to pose for the thumbnail, so here we go. Yep, 3, 2, 1, pose. That's all you got. You've had such good poses for the last like 3 or 4 movies, and that's what you came up with for this one. Your favorite movie of all time.
I'll have to get some really. Let me adjust the lighting and make sure it's perfect, and I'll get back to you in 3 hours.
Yes. So let's go. Now, let's go over to our new favorite section, which of the show, which is the IMDb user reviews, and I'm going to filter by 1 star. and
This should be interesting.
And see what they say. From August 2006.
I bet pretentious comes up.
Don't believe the hype. From 2005, overrated tripe. That's from the Mantis. From 2006, when art attacks. From 2009, simply titled Drivel. Oh, this one thinks he's witty. From 2005, 2001, A Cure for Insomnia. That would be what I title my review of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, for the record. But it's he's at least trying to be witty. Huh?
Sure.
Masterpiece of Crap is another title on here. Oh, there's a second review called A Cure for Insomnia. Oh, it's not even original.
Oh.
Damn, that's a shame. That's a real shame. The worst movie of the century. Amazingly boring. Typical bloated Kubrick nonsense about absolutely nothing.
Whoa. That's a bold statement. Have they not watched like any of his other movies? They all have like a thing that they're saying.
Yeah, there's actually a ton of these. How many is there? If I go back up to the top, see how many. There's 195 1-star reviews for 2001 on IMDb.
Yeah.
Alternatively, there is 985 10-star reviews on IMDb.
That's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good. Yes. So there you go. That is basically the show. I will remind you to go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV to support us and keep the content coming. But you can also support us, of course, by hitting the like button and subscribing and commenting. These things are very important on YouTube for spreading the show around and hitting more of an audience. You can also, of course, get us on Twitter @mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Tara, would you like to promote anything else that's coming up or that we do?
Sure. If you enjoy 60s science fiction, you should watch The Twilight Zone along with us. We've been working our way through the classic series, and we're right now in season 3, and it's been a blast. So come check that out.
Yeah, but that's pretty much us. I should tell you what's coming next time, though, shouldn't I?
Yeah, we have a special one.
It is a special one, if it is what I think it is, but I'm just double checking because I'm not 100%. But I believe we're actually doing something a little bit different next episode. For episode 101, for our movie Test Subject 101, it's actually a twofer. we'll be going to be doing a dual review of two films together. It'll be obvious why, because we are doing the original King Kong and the original Godzilla in the same episode. So
We're crazy.
So expect shenanigans, I don't know.
I'm not even sure how this is going to work. Like, do we do two separate reviews and then talk about both of them at the end? Or do we do like both of the first acts together and then the second acts and then the spoilers start all together? My brain's broke.
How dare you give them an indication that we don't know what we're doing? How dare you?
Sure. Sorry, guys, if this is your first time figuring that out.
I know exactly what I'm doing at all times. Thank you very much. I will not have anything else suggested otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you fake it until you make it. All right, that's all I hear anyway. Yeah. So that's what's coming next time. So look forward to that next week. So even episode 101's a biggie. And then a lot of Godzilla and Kong stuff over the next month before the new film comes out in March, which obviously we're going to be doing. So that's the plan.
Which was a surprise drop for us. So we're trying to get this stuff all in.
Well, it was meant to be May, and they pushed it forward to March, the bastards.
Right.
So now we have...
Expect a lot of monsters.
1, 2, 3. We got 4 different episodes we have to do before that movie that are all related to it before it comes out. So there's obviously a couple of vote winners interspersed and 1 or 2 other things, but expect a lot of kaiju over the next month and a half. So there you go. That has been episode 100 of the Atomic Cinema Experiment, and that has been a discussion of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Hopefully it lived up to the hype, if there was indeed such a thing. I hope there was. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer. Okay, just before I do my catchphrase, you better say the right thing, because there's an obvious thing you have to say to me when I say this.
Oh,
and
I'm not going to say it.
And I'm going to be disappointed if it doesn't click in your brain when I say it. Computer, add salsa.
Oh, there's so much pressure.
Come on, it's the most famous line for the movie.
What?
Computer, add salsa. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. It's so obvious. It's so easy. What the hell, women?
I'm sorry, Peter. I'm afraid I can't do that.